Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Nazir, page 37, in which we're introduced to an idea that when it comes to the prohibition of eating a cheeseburger, which is basar b'chalav, there's a prohibition of eating milk products at the same time together with meat products. And on this, the Talmud said that even though that is the truth, it is possibly a chiddush. It is something which is unique, that cannot be connected to any other mitzvah, and therefore, if you could find a law connected to it, you cannot derive anything from it to other cases, because it's such a novel situation. And on this, the Talmud asks, well, what is this chiddush? On this, the Talmud proposes that perhaps, if you would think about it, we know that a person can have a delicious cup of kosher milk, and at a separate time, they're allowed to have a delicious steak. However, once you put these two totally permissible things together, all of a sudden it becomes forbidden. So he said this is a tremendous novelty and hard to even fathom. If in fact there's something wrong with it, then why individually is it okay? That only once it's together it becomes problematic. On this, the Talmud says that's actually not necessarily a chiddush, because chiddush comes from the word chadash. It's new. It's something in which there is no other situation like it. But we know that there are other things which are forbidden mixtures, such as a person could take grape seeds. They could also take seeds which are, let's say, barley seeds or wheat seeds, and they could plant the grape seeds in one field and far away the wheat and barley seeds in the different respective fields and do anything wrong. However, there is a prohibition called kilayim. They are not allowed to have them together, and once you bring these seeds together, it becomes problematic. The Talmud doesn't bring this up, but we also know that this is the case when it comes to wool garments and linen garments. There's nothing wrong with wearing a nice woolen garment. There's also nothing wrong with wearing a garment which is made out of linen. But there is a prohibition called shatnez, that if you have a garment in which wool and linen are woven, are mixed together, then all of a sudden it cannot be worn. So the reality is, even though it's hard to understand, it's not something which is specific to the laws of milk and meat. And therefore, the Talmud says, the reason why we find that milk and meat, basar b'chalav, is a novelty is because if you would take a piece of steak and you would pour milk on the top of it and allow the milk to completely absorb and get soaked into that meat, and then you would eat that meat just like that, you have actually not violated a Torah prohibition. And it's been soaking inside this meat all day. So clearly there's milk in the meat. However, if instead you would take the milk and the meat and you would cook them together and then eat it, that's when it becomes a biblical prohibition. Because the Torah says, the language, lo savashel gedi b'chalev imo. You're not allowed to cook the milk and the meat together and then eat it. In that way would be the prohibition. Now, of course, we still don't eat milk and meat together. But interestingly enough, technically speaking, if you would have a hamburger and you go into the refrigerator and you put a cold piece of cheese on the top of that hamburger and you're eating a cheeseburger, not recommended, but you've actually not violated the Torah prohibition. And therefore, this is something in which is considered to only be a novelty when it comes to milk and meat. But we don't find this anywhere else. And therefore, because of that, we can't derive anything else from it. But again, we see this important concept that we could also apply, that sometimes we find in life, and we sometimes unfortunately find this in relationships, sometimes people do better separated. Of course, it's a terrible tragedy, divorce. However, when two people are together and they don't belong together, it's like fire and water. It's absolute destruction. However, if you're separated from one another, sometimes things are okay. You have to be able to obviously know when you're in a relationship that you're able to, of course, be close together, and of course that's ideal.